So we're going to take a look at some of those tools that we discussed briefly with respect to operations consulting. One of them was called an issues tree. So if we have a particular set of issues, so we have issues. Okay. So we could start with the issue. What is the issue that we actually want to take a look at? And that issue could be, we are not quite satisfied with our product sales, and so we want to improve the sales of our product. So here we go. So we could say our issue is that we want to increase sales. All right? And so what we will do is, if we want to increase sales, then how can we do this? So we'll kind of look over here. We might say, well, let's consider change the sales strategy. Here we might want to look at improve the marketing strategy. Marketing strategy. And then here we might say, well, let's look at lower the unit cost of the item. So these are three possible things. And we sort of begin to build the tree out. Well, if we are looking at changing the sales strategy, what can we do? We may want to examine the sales force organization. So we could look at the sales force organization. We could look at the skills, the skill set, and then we could look at the compensation or promotion strategy. Promotion strategy. On the marketing side, we could do something with the product quality, or we could consider some sort of rebranding. Or we could consider sort of a new advertising strategy, well, which is part of the rebranding exercise. But we could look at, let's say, we could look at something like repackaging. All right, so we could look at repackaging. On lowering the cost side of things, we could basically say, let's look at our raw material supply. We could also look at the production processes, right, and see if there's some issues there. Or we could look at our distribution supply chain. Okay, and then each of those could then be looked at even further. For example, we could look at what are some of the issues with the skill set. What are the issues that we have with promotion, product quality? Can we look at, for example, in terms of product quality, we could look at conformance versus performance. All right, and when we say conformance versus performance, we're talking about conformance to specs versus performance as it's perceived by the person who's actually purchasing the product. So that's just an example of an issues tree. We could do another one. Yes, just we don't have to save that. Let's look at gap analysis. So gap analysis is another tool. And with gap analysis, essentially what we tend to have is that we have a set of performance attributes. So we could say here's some performance attributes. And we have the score of performance. Sorry. Let's squeeze that in there. Performance. So we rate it on 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 10. All right. And then our attributes could be as follows. So let me see if I could draw a nice straight line here. Attributes could be sort of a service quality, maybe. We could look at our ability to customization. We might want to look at responsiveness. We could look at even service support, after sales support. So let's service support. And we would look at our existing and say, well, how are we doing here? 3, we're not doing too badly over here. Then we probably could be down here, maybe somewhere. We may be somewhere up here on this guy. So that is your current performance profile. But what if your expectations were actually somewhere around here? And then here you probably were expecting to perform somewhere around here. And then, so in this case, this is the actual performance. This is what our current results are, our actual. But this, I'll just kind of just to make it look a little different. I'm missing something. And that's just that the profile is different. And this is desired. So with that now, here's where we have our gap. And we will want to close this gap all in here. All right. So that's kind of what gap analysis would do for us if we wanted to get into that. Porter's 5 forces that you already know, surveys, flowcharts. Let's probably just look at an example of a flowchart. I think that we're pretty cool with that. I'm going to save this, and it's the new one. Flowcharts. So flowcharts, if we could sort of map a process, let's see. If you were going to open an account in a bank, so you'd have enter the bank, right? Enter one part of the process. You may then select Q, E. Some cases just a single Q. Some cases you have multiple Qs. Then you discuss with teller or agent, customer service rep. You get presented with options. Let's just say review options. Let's cross that out. We'll say review options. Then you would need to make decision. Okay. And then you exit. So that's the sort of process flow. You enter, you go into queue, and review the options, and exit. And just by analyzing, well, Do we have sufficient capacity in our queues? Do we have are the queues too long? What's causing that? Is the teller knowledgeable? So, hey, you want to look at waiting time. Here we're looking at, customer service representative, their knowledge. DGE. We want to look at things like courtesy, service, in general. And knowledge is actually part of that. Then you sort of reviewing the options, you make a decision, and then you exit. So when you review the options, you could talk about sufficiency of the options. The main thing here is that we are using this flowchart to really help us study the process that the customer will actually go through. Okay. What else can we talk about? I think a number of these statistical tools, you're kind of familiar with a lot of them. Just for example, in terms of statistics, probability theory. We get into hypothesis testing. And I'm not going to review that here for you because you just completed that with Dr. Lee. Then we're looking at things such as analysis of variance. We're looking at confidence intervals. All of those things can be used because you might want to estimate a parameter, a performance parameter, and see whether or not there's a pretty good chance that you're meeting a standard that has been set. So you collect data on a process and assess that. You could also hypothesize about the performance of a process, collect data to see if the hypothesis is actually supported. Your hypothesis, the research hypothesis, is supported. You could do contingency tables as well too, to look for contingency, to look for a relationship between categorical variables. You could do regression. So all of these tools can be used in statistical tools. So all of that can be used to assist you in operations consulting. And there are many, many other tools that I mentioned earlier. Stakeholder analysis, well, find out what your stakeholder issues are, and then you simply figure out how you will actually take that into consideration as you go about attempting to deal with your customers. Not your customers, sorry, your stakeholders. You want to make sure that the issues are taken into consideration. Otherwise, you may have some pressure on your hands as you attempt to implement a solution. Okay? So we'll just sort of stop with that and take it from there.